Hello and welcome to day 61 of the 90-day breakthrough challenge. 61 days. And from today to the end of the year, it's 31 days. I was thinking about this yesterday and realized how time really runs when you are counting. When you're counting, time really, really runs. But do you know when it does when you're not counting? It flies. And that's why people say, oh, time flies. Of course, time flies. Because when you're not counting, one day just goes by. You get on the internet, you're browsing, maybe you're on social media, you're watching videos. Before you know it, the morning is gone. And it's Monday, you're thinking back and wondering, I had intended to clean my house and write a report and read a book on Saturday. What happened? It's because you are not counting time and time flew. But if you are counting, time really runs. And that's why when you count your time, it gives you the urgency. That's why it's so important that we remain vigilant with how the remaining part of the year goes. Because unfortunately, for most people, they have already signed out of this year. December is not yet even here, but people have signed out of this year. They are waiting for 2021. You will soon start seeing those quotes online that 2021 is my year. Yeah. This, forget about 2020. 2021 is my year. I'm here to flourish. You won't flourish because you are the same person crossing on into 2021. The change of calendar has nothing to do with the change inside. We change our minds when we create a focus um, and, and hold that focus. We become vigilant to make sure that our attention is not hijacked, that we don't become aimless, that we don't become wandering generalities. We become very specific in terms of the direction we are heading towards by following an aim, holding our attention with control, and doing it consistently. That's what one of the things we've tried to do during the 90-day breakthrough challenge. So today I'd intended for us to speak about the power of your brain, the power of my brain. I have proven to myself over and over that just when I thought that this is the most that I could do, there is still something extra that I can do. Your brain is elastic. My brain is elastic. But because I want us to do a little bit of coaching at the end of this session, we are just going to speak about the attributes of thought, the attributes of thought, so that each day as I close the day, I should remember that I have entertained a minimum of 60,000 thoughts in the course of the day. And that unfortunately, more than 90% of those thoughts are a repetition from the previous day, from the previous week, from the previous month, from the previous years. 60,000 thoughts. Geniuses and the unstoppable people are those who manage to get even just 5% of those thoughts to be intentional and aligned to the direction they are going in. That's all you need. To control just a portion of those thoughts and control them habitually until they create a neural circuit where they deploy automatically. Just the same way your hand reaches for the phone when you want to snooze or to log on to social media automatically. If we get to a place where the thoughts around our biggest goal, thoughts around the most important elements of our identity or our vision or our purpose, if those can become intentional, they become intentional long enough for them to become a habit. If that happens, it changes our lives automatically. And so how do you take over thought? I think thinking about the attributes of thought is so important in terms of empowering us to start taking over, taking control of our thoughts. Here's what I was thinking this morning when I woke up. I was up around 2:45 in the morning and sat there with my journal to get ready for the day. And I went to bed last night, curious to see what thoughts would cross my mind first when I woke up in the morning. And it is so subtle what happens when you wake up. When you wake up, when you enter a new environment, when you move to a new country, in the initial time, because when you wake up, you are literally relaunching yourself. So when you wake up in the morning, that pattern replicates itself everywhere else. But what happens in the morning, it's so curious. Where I wake up in the morning, and the first thing my brain does is to scan where I am, scanning my environment to confirm that I am where I had slept. And somehow somebody didn't come at night and move me from this house to another. And that's why it's the worst time to scare somebody is when they are waking up. Because they are waking up with, there is a disjointed awareness about where they are and even who they are. If for example, I woke up in the morning and somebody has placed a scarecrow at the foot of my bed, I will scream the loudest. I will scream with such a volume that people have never heard me scream with. The reason is that I am needing those few minutes in the morning, those few seconds, in fact, it's even microseconds, to recalibrate and remind myself of who I am, where I am. And unfortunately, I end up reminding myself about everything that I have been thinking before. I will remember who annoyed me yesterday or who blessed me yesterday, who blocked me when I was driving or who made way for me, who supported me, who didn't support me, who inboxed me or texted me or called me or who failed to return my call or text, such that I end up relaunching all the thoughts, the software from yesterday. It's important to realize this because when we learn to do something new, for example, when you learn to ride a bicycle, initially you are doing it consciously, but it comes to a day when you're no longer doing it consciously, when your body takes over. You see, when you wake up in the morning, you have the opportunity to experience any emotions you choose. You have the opportunity because you are starting a new day. You can choose your thoughts. But we've been wired in such a way that we carry a software that reminds us of who we are and where we have been. And unfortunately, tends to paint a negative picture or an anxious picture to where we are going unless we are intentional about it. So it's a powerful software. It keeps us grounded. But because it needs to protect us, it also keeps us limited. Such that when you wake up in the morning, if it's a lot of the times it's uncomfortable to wake up and lie there in the darkness. Somehow you need to feel the texture of the blanket, and if your bed creaks, you hear that creak so that it reminds you that you are in the environment where you expected to be. Your body wakes up in the morning ready to fire the same emotions you are used to. In other words, your body is like your subconscious mind. Your body is ready in the morning to activate the habit of who you are, how you breathe, how you position yourself, how you feel. It's your body, that is just the emotional habit of you. There's just a software that fires up, it fires up subconsciously. And that's why you will hear, especially people who are married and share the bed, they're like, why do you always sleep like an ex? It's because it's not the mind controlling them, it's the body. The body has a habit. The body is launching who they are. I think my opportunity and your opportunity to reform those elements is for us to think specifically about how we think, the nature of our thought. Let me give you some attributes of thought. When you think about a thought, number one, a thought is a signal. A thought is a signal. It is a very specific signal. When you think, you are sending a signal to your brain, but you're also sending a signal to your body. Your brain has the capacity to differentiate between conscious thought and unconscious conscious thought. Your brain has the capacity, it's not all your brain, just part of your brain, especially your prefrontal cortex. It has the capacity to differentiate, to characterize the thought, but your body does not. Such that if you wake up and you see something at the foot of your bed that looks like a scarecrow, even before you think about it, your body will have interpreted and reacted You're reacting because your body connected with the sympathetic nervous system is ready to fire at the goal. You don't even have the time to think about it. So every time you think a thought, you are sending a signal to your body regarding how it will react. But that also means every time a thought you have thought about before occurs to you subconsciously, especially that 90% of thoughts that we don't control, it is sending a signal that reminds you who you are, a signal that reminds you how you should treat this person, how you should behave in this environment. And unfortunately, a lot of the time, a lot of those thoughts are thoughts that are meant to protect us. You have in your mind thoughts which every time you even hear a snake or see a snake, it fires to put your body in a certain state. Every thought is a signal. Number two, every thought is a command. Every thought you think is a command. Every thought you think commands your brain and your body to react in a certain way, to anticipate certain experiences, to release certain resources. When you think, for example, that I must complete this project today, that's a command. It starts from being a command that is, it's a thought, becomes a command that is deployed, becomes a belief. You become convinced that today you must complete this project, or finish writing this article, or finish reading this book, or you must return a call to your boss or to your client. Every thought in that way becomes a command, which is why we have to be very selective about what commands we send to our brain, especially the commands we send habitually. Cravings are commands. Cravings are commands. Cravings are like requests from your body that your brain accepts and then creates a thought around it. So that when you crave something, you are commanding yourself. You have to now move the body to fulfill the craving, but it starts as a thought. I am so thirsty. That's a thought. It becomes a command. And then you become convinced that you must, I have to, I have to drink water. I have to go watch this movie. I have to make this call. I have to write this paper. Number three, every thought is a domino. Every thought is a domino. There is no thought that stands on its own. There is no thought that stands on its own. If it were possible, it would be possible to start momentum with one thought. And yet you can never start momentum with one thought. You can't start momentum with one action. The action initiates the process that eventually creates the momentum. Because we've said momentum before, that momentum is an accumulation of a series of moments of a certain character. Maybe it's great moments or exciting moments or powerful moments, such that when they accumulate eventually, it creates momentum. So a thought, every thought you think, it's a domino because it ends up activating similar thoughts. It ends up activating related thoughts. It ends up activating the other thoughts required to make what you're thinking about possible. If you decide, for example, if you think I have to go to the city, or I have to fly to that country, what are the other thoughts that will be activated? Passport, fare, ticket, time of travel, any responsibilities you have that must be taken over by somebody else, such that by thinking that thought, you activate a domino. And this is what it means to to land a thought. To land a thought, where when you think about a specific thought that is so important, that you land it by also considering what the other effects are going to be. That is why you have to think about the consequences of your goal, the consequences in terms of the positive consequences, but even more importantly, what obstacles are you going to face? What is this going to mean in terms of creating the time, creating the energy, creating the attention necessary to learn this thought? Every thought is a domino. Every thought is a signal. You send a signal to your body, especially. You send a signal to your subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind will need a repeated exposure to the same thought before it buys it. Every thought is a command. And your subconscious mind is not just going to obey you. It will obey you today, but not tomorrow, until this thought becomes habitual. And the third, I've said, every thought is a domino. It starts like this, it's like a tiny spark that ends up activating other sparks. Number four, every thought is a source. Every thought is a source. You can have people in the same environment with the same opportunities, but they end up pursuing different actions. The difference in their actions is not based on the environment. It is based on the thoughts from which they are acting. What thought has led you to start a business? What thought has led you to sign up for school? What thought has led you to start pursuing this objective or this goal? What thought has led you to start growing? That thought is the source of the character of your pursuit. And if that is the highest possible thought that you could have thought in those circumstances, it will manifest in the quality of your actions, the consistency of your pursuit, the discipline with which you show up, the commitment with which you tackle every obstacle that comes your way in this area. Every thought is a source. It is the source of the energy that characterizes the institution. The thought becomes the idea becomes the hidden structure around which whatever you're creating is created. So in that way, your thought becomes the source, it becomes like the fire behind. And the clearer the thought is, the more convincing it is, the more connected to your identity, to your purpose, to your future it is, the better, the stronger, the easier it becomes for you to persist and get through to the very end. Number five, every thought is a pattern. Every thought is a pattern, but is also part of a pattern. Every thought is a pattern. Every thought is a pattern because it's when I think about everything I've learned about neuroscience, how when you think, you have to activate at least 4 different parts of your brain. Every time you think, you activate a minimum of 4 different parts of your brain. Every time you think, you think visually, which means you see things. That means you activate the occipital part of your brain, the back part of the visual cortex. Every time you think, you activate the feeling part of your brain. That means you activate the amygdala and the hippocampus, the structures which process your emotion. Every time you think, you activate the anticipatory centers of your brain. That means you activate the caudate nucleus and part of your thalamus, which starts to pull together these strands, because the caudate nucleus, the internal capsule, the thalamus, those structures sound complex, but those are physical structures. They start processing these signals to put them together. Every time you think, you activate the motor cortex, the part that controls your movements. You activate your sensory cortex, the part that thinks about what it will feel like. For example, if I say to you right now that he was walking and he hit his big toe on a rock and it was so painful, that statement by itself is processed by all these areas of your brain. You have to see it in your mind. You can see him walking and hitting the nail, and you can almost feel the pain. You're feeling that pain partly because there's an emotional reaction activated in your hippocampus and amygdala, but also in your thalamus in terms of figuring out what it would feel like. And that's because you can, when you are seeing him move in your brain, you're activating the movement part of your brain, the part that controls your movement, the motor cortex, the part that controls sensation. You can tell what it would feel like. You're also activating your executive cortex, your prefrontal cortex, the part that thinks, what should he do? Oh, there's a car coming. He needs to jump out of that place onto the curb or to the side of the road. You activate all these areas. That's why every thought you think is a pattern. And that's how, when you think the same thoughts over and over, you create your personality, because your personality is a pattern. My personality is a pattern. It's a pattern of behavior that I deploy every single day. And that starts to change when I change the thoughts that I think. Every time you hear people say, oh, she has changed or he has changed, it means that something significant has happened in his life or her life that has forced them or made it possible for them to start thinking a different pattern of thoughts. Every thought you think, especially when it's a repeated thought, it's a pattern. It sets a pattern. When your alarm rings in the morning and you reach for it, you create a pattern by what you do with it. If you are snoozing, it becomes a pattern that you deploy every single time. I have seen people in my network who never used to take alcohol very consistently start taking alcohol. And suddenly, that was especially when I was in medical school and early in my career. And suddenly, they are taking alcohol every day. It started with one thought, which became a pattern, such that eventually it is one thought, it ends up becoming a pattern later, but the pattern was present from the word go, because it requires this person to think this specific thought and take specific actions and end up with a certain result, and then repeat it. After it's been repeated for about a month, it is an established habit. In that way, a thought ends up creating a pattern. Number 7, thought is a software. Literally, a thought is a software. When you click on an icon to activate a software, you know exactly what is going to happen. When you click on Microsoft Word or Safari or Chrome or Mozilla Firefox or Internet Explorer, if you are still using it to search the internet, you know exactly what it's going to do, because it's a software that has certain attributes. Now, the reason why you have to think about your thoughts as software is because sometimes you need to update your thoughts. Sometimes you need to upgrade your thoughts. Sometimes you need to replace your thoughts. If you are thinking Internet Explorer thoughts when you're trying to search the modern internet, and you're using a different maybe browsing system like Bing or these other less known browsing platforms, and you're not finding what you want, maybe you need to probably move to Google, or if you're searching scientific material, go to PubMed or whatever platform is appropriate. But you have to realize that it's a software that you are deploying. This software has specific attributes. This software has capabilities, but it also has limits, such that by the thoughts you think, you have literally installed a software in your mind that determines what you will allow yourself to do. It determines what you will allow yourself to dream. It determines what you will allow yourself to expect, because you have literally installed a software. A software becomes useful because it has repeatable behavior. You click on this, you type, you click save, and it saves. You close it, it closes. You come back, you click on it, it opens. You add some more content. It is repeatable. Do you have in your life software that is repeatable, but which you don't want to see repeat itself? Those behaviors, those habits which are so difficult to get rid of, they didn't start off as habits. They started as a thought. And every habit that I want to break, it becomes easier for me to break the habit if I can break that down, the habit down, if I can narrow it down to the thoughts where it originated from. Snoozing in the morning, what is the thought behind it? I'll wake up in 30 minutes. Wrong. You are a crack, you are an addict of sleep at that time. You and someone who is addicted to cocaine are not any different, because you're being controlled by the brain that only values pleasure right now and wants to avoid all forms of displeasure. So there's no difference. And if I snooze when I'm waking up in the morning, chances are I'm going to procrastinate on what I need to do today. If I snooze maybe from 5 to 5:30 to 6, it's just so beautiful how we can snooze. If there was a prize for snoozing in 2012, 2013, I could have won that prize. I could have shown up on the stage, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for our next awardee. This gentleman has been able to snooze consistently for 365 days. And now he's about to start another year where he is going to snooze even better. Like literally, I made the mistake of living really close to where I used to work, which means I didn't even need to drive there. I could wake up and walk there. It's a habit. What is the thought at the root of the habits that you're trying to break? What is the root at the habit that you're trying to establish? What is the thought at the root of this habit you're trying to establish? Have you thought it all the way through? What obstacles are likely to arise? What distractions are likely to arise? Thought is the pathway to everywhere you want to go. Thought is the pathway to everywhere I want to go. This is day 61. Right now, I don't even think about it. Waking up, just today I woke up at 2:45. I don't even think about it. I don't even have to think about what time I need to go to bed. By 7:30, heading to 8, I am ready. And this has ended up working for me amazingly because the day is so busy that no matter how passionate I am to study in the evening or do something valuable in the evening, I can't. I am too tired at the end of the day. So what ends up happening is that in the course of the day, I'm doing very busy, a lot of manual work. There's a lot of intellectual work, but a lot of manual work, writing notes, copying notes, uh, speaking to patients, counseling patients' families, calling families, such that this manual work ends up tiring my body, so that by the end of the day, I have intellectual space to do the work that I want, but I'm too tired. Why don't I flip it so that I create 4 hours at the beginning of the day, so that by the time it's 7:38, when I'm launching in to start doing both the intellectual but also the big amount of manual work, I am ready. Such that now it's not it started off with a thought. I need to find a different way of running my days. I am losing too many valuable evenings when I have work to be done. I have the mental space to do it, but physically I'm too tired. I go to the gym or I exercise in the house and do push-ups, but still I'm not at my peak. And then I decided to flip. I started to flip. So I sent the thought became the signal for me. That signal, I entertained it long enough, it became a command. Once I started following this command, it became a domino. Once I started waking up, it changed everything else. If I'm waking up at this time, it means sometimes every evening I have to get my shoes ready. I have to remove what I'll be wearing the following day, socks, and place them where they need to be, because I don't have the luxury when I wake up to start ironing things in the morning at 3. It became a domino. Then it became the source of all the decisions I'm making. The fact that I have to be up by 3, whatever happens, I have to be up, became the source. It created a pattern. Now in the morning, my life, the pattern is it's very different from what it was 2 months ago. And I've literally installed a software now where I know what I need to do when I'm leaving the car. At the end of the day, I leave my card, my library card, my school card there, so that I will use it as a key to enter the library. I leave a bottle of water in the car. If I leave the car, there's no bottle of water. I get into the house, pick one and drop it in the car, so that in the morning, those are not decisions I'm making. I get into the car, I ignite the car, drink that bottle of water, and drive out. It has become a software that I can deploy without even thinking about it. Finally, every thought is a seed. And it's important to think of it this way, because every thought is a seed, that just having the thought by itself is not enough. Which is why, as you reflect, you should get into the habit of writing down your ideas, because seeds germinate into ideas. Your thoughts are seeds, they germinate into ideas. And when those ideas occur to you, write them down. But it's so important to think about it like this, because I have to realize, and you have to realize, that just by having a thought by itself does not give you the result that that thought is capable of giving you. And it's important to realize that, because our brain does not know the difference between thinking about something and accomplishing something. And unfortunately, sometimes we sell ourselves short. We think thoughts so vividly that we subconsciously believe that we have already uh, experienced the success or the accomplishment or the progress that is required. You buy a book, right? You know the title, you know the author. When you hear people discussing that book, people who have read the whole book, you're like, I have the book. Yeah, I think it's an amazing book. You haven't read it. What you have is a seed. It's a seed because you thought about it, you bought the book, you haven't read it. That's the same thing with every thought you have. Just because you set the goal, it's a thought that you put down as a goal, does not mean you have arrived. It is a seed. It is going to take time before this seed germinates. And of course, you have to plant it first. How would you plant it? Show up every day to what you committed to do. That's how you plant the seed. You plant it over and over. You plant it every day. You bring it there every single day. I think this is a different kind of seed. You have to show up where, let's say you planted, you have to show up there every single day and water it. The rain has to come every day. At the end of the day, the rain from yesterday dries up. Following day, you have to water it afresh. Otherwise, it dies. Every habit is a seed, and it's a seed that requires to be watered every day. Every goal is a seed. Every goal starts with a thought. It's a seed. You have to water it every day. When you sleep at night, you should presume that it dries up. The soil around that seed, that goal, that vision, that core value dries up. When you wake up in the morning, you have to water it afresh. You have the habit, the pattern of igniting yourself, of transitioning intentionally between things that you are doing, is a seed that you have to water every day. And the more consistently you water it, the greater the likelihood that it will grow big enough for it to have enough roots to go beyond the surface soil that is dry into the deeper soil where it can now sustain itself. I believe right now that what I have done over the last 60 days, waking specifically at this time, waking at 3 every single day, has already created sufficient roots, but these roots have not grown deep enough. It's going to require for me probably another 60 days for it to fully develop roots so that it becomes 100% automatic, where I don't even, it's so amazing. I woke up today at 2:45 without an alarm. I woke up literally 2 minutes before the alarm went off, around 2:43. I woke up and looked at my alarm and I'm like, is this true? Looking at the time on the alarm clock. Then I went to the sitting room and looked at my phone, and it is just before 2:45. So when I'm walking back to the bedroom, then the alarm goes off. How I would love for me and you to get there, where the what we call the keystone habits for the goals we are pursuing, the goals that will make the biggest difference in our lives, we get to a place where it is that automatic, where you deploy it as a software, where it is repeatable, where you deploy it as a command that your brain and your body knows that they just have to obey. You deploy it as a domino, where it starts off from when the time arrives, it starts off and it creates a pattern that you can predict. Every thought is a seed. In the initial days, you have to water it consistently until someday it has enough roots for it to grow and take over your life. My question to you is, what are your top 3 thoughts right now? What are the top 3 thoughts you are thinking right now? What are the top 3 thoughts you are thinking right now? The better question is, what are the top 3 thoughts that you should be thinking right now? What are the top 3 thoughts that you should be thinking right now? So that those thoughts become the signal, the specific signal that you're sending to your subconscious mind. and you start sending those signals consistently, so that those thoughts become the commands you're sending to yourself, and your body has to obey them, so that those thoughts become the domino that creates a series of consequences that lead you to where you need to go, so that those thoughts become a source, the source of the energy, of the focus, or the consistency, of the clarity, curiosity, the energy. Probably repeating myself, but they become the source. What thoughts should you be thinking right now, so that those thoughts create the pattern that elevates your life, that allows you to level up? It creates a pattern that will eventually result in a higher level of momentum in the areas where you need the most amount of momentum in your life. What 3 thoughts should you be thinking about right now, so that they create a software that is repeatable in your life, so that they become a seed that will germinate the life you want to see yourself live? What thoughts are you thinking right now? What thoughts have you been thinking since morning, for everyone in East Africa, which is everyone on the call right now? What thoughts have you been thinking since morning? And what signals have you been sending to yourself therefore? What domino did you set up in your mind? What kind of source did you entertain? What kind of seed is that? What kind of pattern did you create by the thoughts you were thinking about all morning? What kind of software did you create? Is it time for you and I to upgrade our software, so that we start thinking deliberately, knowing that these thoughts have attributes that lead us in the direction that we need to go and can go and should go? I'm going to end this presentation part there. I didn't anticipate that it would take us that long to cover this, but I hope that as I shared these ideas, that it inspired in you some reflections about what your thoughts mean, and why it's so important for you and I to become deliberate about how we think, and therefore what kind of life we are creating, whether we are strengthening the way we think right now or upgrading how we think in the direction we want to go. So let's just have some discussion around this. Is there anything that strikes you? Are there any other ideas about thoughts that you would like us to learn, that you have learned before? Just feel free to share. Elena, welcome. I had not mentioned your name. I think you came just after we had started. Let's start with you, Elena. Anything that stood out for you and I commit to, that kind of pattern that we started earlier, the challenge?
I'm in a noisy place. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear.
Yeah. So the topic today is quite, as usual, relevant. It's actually something I was meditating on this morning. Um, there comes a time where, in the middle of the night, say at between 3 and 5 a.m., you just have this nagging thought that this is the answer to the problem that you've been stuck with. It's a fine distinction to know if this is your inner critic, or this is just your inner voice that is telling you that this is the direction that you should go, like leaning more into alignment, into what your mind and your body is, just more into alignment all the same. Yeah, that's exactly what I've been thinking of this morning, and letting go of those negative thoughts that are impacting your negative feelings and things like that. I'm currently reading a book called Letting Go, that really delves deep into things like apathy, depression, fear, and all the other things that we tend to hold on to without thinking about it. So our thoughts have to be very, very intentional. I commit to letting go of my negative thoughts and uh, clinging onto the negative, onto the positive thoughts and things that I want to accomplish in a day, taking it day by day.
Thank you, Elena. Wow. I wouldn't even add anything because it is so true that some of our best ideas, some of our deepest insights occur to us in the context of sleep. What's like 2 or 3 specific new things you've learned from the book you're reading now?
We subconsciously tend to hold on to like underlying what I read today particularly was about grief. In that grief, there's a lot of anger that is within because it is something that you have no control over and we don't really think about it. You think you have, like you can just let it go and it's past, but you haven't really resolved it. You're supposed to, ideally, you are supposed to mellow in that, just disintegrate that particular emotion and handle it step by step and not ignore it entirely because that will still remain in your body. It affects your how your body parts function, how your organs function. It has a domino effect. So as you mentioned today, so overall, ignoring those negative emotions has long-term ramifications for us as human beings.
Wow. Yeah.
They're called psychosomatic illnesses that don't really make sense, but because it all arises because of those unresolved emotions that you have within you.
Yeah. Yeah, that book must be written by a psychologist.
It's actually a medic.
Ah, yes, yeah, it has to be, yeah. So what's like psychosomatic? It what it means is mind and body. It's mind and body, and so I think this is. I mean, you're just helping us really strengthen why it's so important to think deliberately about the thoughts that we think about, because the conscious mind it gets into things and gets out of things like dap dap, you're out, right? That's why two people will break up and they're like, lose my number, I will never think about you again, goodbye, you will never see me again, right? But that is the conscious mind. The body, by the time these people are dating or marrying or working together as business partners or working together as boss and junior, it started off with the thought that, oh, I have been hired, right? Then it created a pattern. The body has bought into that pattern, such that undoing what the body has already learned is going to take time. It's, for example, I think one of the easiest ones to use as an illustration is like a romantic relationship. It ends, and then either of these two people can't go back to the restaurants they used to go to. The reason? They walk into the restaurant, the body fires up an experience that the body already knows, right? The body associates the environment with someone else, and now here they're walking in with someone else, and the body is deploying a previous pattern because the pattern is alive. It's going to take time. The pattern has to be overridden, and overriding a pattern takes a long time. Grief is so painful because the conscious mind wants to go a different direction from where the body is. The conscious mind wants to move on, but the body doesn't move on. The body has to first resolve, experience, truly experience and own up the place where it is. And of course, we don't want to experience the pain of where we are. That's the reason why it's easy for people to rebound. They meet someone else and they're like, oh, I love you within 2, 3, 4, 5 days. It's because the body is still is hungering for an experience similar to and an outlet. So the outlet becomes a distraction, but that pain never goes away. And that there are too many people who are married, but they have never broken up with their exes. They've probably some, maybe one, two exes that there was no proper closure between the people. Then there was no proper processing of the emotions internally. Letting go, that's a book that I would like to at least peruse through. I like to, if she has videos online, I usually find that some of these people's ideas, if you find a good presentation they made for like 45, 50 minutes, an hour, sometimes you get their key ideas and you can use those. Elena, you are going to say something.
Yes. That particular book explores a great variety of things that uh, that are within emotions, in the
Yeah.
sense that it also explores things around frequencies and how fear is on top of anger and apathy and depression, like what range of emotions that you're feeling. If you're analyzing your emotions on a consistent basis, or even your thoughts on a consistent basis, just exactly what we were talking about last week, what range do you tend to be? Do you experience those high range emotions, and why don't you? Are you dealing with that the underlying resentment that is causing you not to experience those high range emotions? They
Yeah.
explore a lot of I don't know, there's a lot of biology in there, there's a lot of I don't know, metaphysical things, and a lot of spirituality in terms of Christianity and that. So it's a lot of evidence based research. I'd advise anyone to see a synopsis of that or even get the book. I'll share it in the group if you like.
Yeah, sure.
um, Going further, also came across new material in line with what you're talking about, rebound and that anger that comes with letting go of things that were supposed to be let go, like just getting over relationships. And a new phenomenon came up called conscious uncoupling. So there are people who are able to consciously control their emotions and their thoughts about a certain breakup or getting over a certain situation and work towards it in a positive way. So it's just overriding what your subconscious mind thinks about a situation and moving forward in a positive way, intentionally.
Yeah. This is an area when it comes to emotions, emotional experiences. This is one of the areas I know I will spend a lot of my speaking on. So this is just food for my soul when to speak about this. Conscious uncoupling. It's closing doors that are closed is not just
Yes.
intellectual, it's emotional.
Mm.
I believe the hardest doors to close are doors within yourself that don't even involve other people. Self-judgment, self-criticism, beating yourself down is you unable to consciously uncouple from your own self-judgments.
Or even your inner critic, because it all comes from the kind of speech that you had in terms of guidance in your childhood. So, is it a false emotion or is it a positive emotion? You also have to cognitively think about these thoughts that you've inherited and just work towards them. What works for you and what doesn't. So you drop what doesn't work and keep on with what works.
I agree with you. It's the journey getting there is tough. I will do during one of the upcoming sessions. I will share with you my journey, having grown up as essentially an adopted son, and what that means, and what that journey has or was like me. That there was no way for me to start tapping into my brilliance without first allowing myself to experience what I was experiencing prior. But let's not let delve into that that much now. We will come to this and make sure you share the book so that people can at least peruse through it or read it if they can. But we will definitely create time to have some of this is an important conversation to have. Let's hear from James. Any key takeaways from today? Thank you so much, Elena.
Thank you. Thank you, Elena. That was quite
Yeah.
profound. It gives me something to think over after this. So what I have to share today is that first of all, I think I will agree with the good doctor that the reflection bit of the session is one of the most important things that we could do. That the few minutes we spent talking over the things we've covered or picked up are one of the most productive moments that we have during that 1 hour. That the whole bit of reflection contains nascent ideas that, if they were developed, could mean a lot, especially for the person that's coming up with them.
Yeah.
Because I think it was once said during this challenge that there's no prescription better than the one that you give yourself. So onto today's reflections. This is what I've picked up. It's quite funny that we just started discussing this after I had come from debating and really thinking of the topic of addictions, and realizing mostly addictions is associated. They are associated with doing something repeatedly over and over again without having control over over you have, without having a choice really. That's what an addiction is, the way I see it. And I was thinking how quitting that I was thinking how not doing that one action has nothing to do with breaking an addiction. That breaking an addiction is not just discontinuing the act of doing whatever one has been doing. How breaking an addiction is merely a switch in identity. That I haven't. It's not something I have researched over. I think there's a whole book to speak about what I'm about to share. It's an idea that's still forming, but I think how people try to go through addictions, that most of them try to quit that action. And by trying to quit the action, the journey becomes long and intense and insanely difficult, which it probably did not have to be, because they're trying through their actions to influence their identity instead of doing it the other way around, having an identity that they can back up in action, so that a drunkard and a person who cannot control himself or herself from taking alcohol becomes the journey does not become, you know what, I am not going to pick up that bottle, but it is, I am the kind of person that does not pick up I am the kind of person that won't pick up that bottle. And they affirm that identity by not picking up the bottle. That is what I was thinking over. And for it to be broken down, I think I think it's just the same concept that has been broken down today to the topic of thought, and how powerful it is. That I've realized that the whole concept of our identity is just thought. How I think of myself, that's my identity. Just as a series of thoughts that I have grown and developed over time, and they have formed my identity, and my identity affects a lot of things and the way I do them. I was thinking about the small actions I do and why I do them. For example, why I have the stubborn tendency of biting my fingers. I have no idea, biting my nails. I have no idea where it comes from. But I was thinking about all the little things I do. When I walk really fast, you know, I might say I'm trying to save time, but what is the message that is being sent to my mind? And how is that affecting my general identity? Uh, when I scratch my head, these very little things that we do, how are they that I do, how are they going back to affect my identity in either a positive or a negative way? How are they affecting my identity? And I think I came to the conclusion that I want to get to somewhere that I do not have to worry about the physical action, that I have the thought in check so well that the physical action takes care of itself. a point where because right now what I find that what I'm doing and what's working for me is I can sit down and I can have 2 minutes of stillness, which in turn will trigger the concept of focus within me, and I will find myself being able to focus my energy. But I want to get to the point where I have the focus so well, it is such a big part of my identity that whenever whenever I'm about to do something and I know that I'm focused, the action will take care of itself. I won't even have to think about it. That if it is a situation that needs me to be in high energy, I have already put myself in that high state of energy such that the action I'm bringing out, if it's clapping my hand, if it's shouting, it's an action that has taken care of itself. It's something that I have done for so long that it takes care of itself eventually. Today's session was so profound to just the thought of me trying to put everything together that we've covered in the whole challenge and how today just fits in there. It's mind blowing, and that is why I think that these sessions that we get to share what we've picked up and what we've covered, I think that they are very important. I will pay more attention to revisiting them after we are through, because it's one thing to read about something, but it is a whole other thing to be doing it yourself and then giving it a name. For example, the whole it's one thing to learn about the whole idea of a breakthrough and how we are going to create progress in our lives, but it's a whole other thing to be in the center, to come up with a strategy that we use, that the strategy that is so personalized to you that you can use to move yourself to the next level. I really hope I did not lose anyone. I hope I have made some bit of sense, if not a lot. Yes, that is part of what I have covered today. I will continue to reflect over it and share anything else that comes up. My commitment today would be to be more intentional about my thoughts. Because I realized that when you asked the question, I think it was rhetorical, the question on what three thoughts have you thought today? I could not remember a single one of them. I do not know which one was good, which one was bad. I just couldn't remember a single one of them. And I think I have created that awareness, and I can comfortably commit to being more intent and aware of my thoughts. So yes, thank you.
Thank you, James. That's a substantive reflection. I wouldn't even add anything. You've touched on several key areas. At the end of the day, we do this. We share a lot of content just to make sure that our brain has enough fodder. To increase the signal so that the signal can start to replace the noise we hear around us, but also the bigger challenges for us to apply everything that we pick here. So thank you, James, for that reflection. Let's hear from Brainy.
Grand Rising, everyone. Thank you, James and Elena, for sharing. My today's takeaway was, I'll just say in general, everything was resonated with me. But the main important thing was when you said, thought is the pathway where I need to go. But how can I really rewire my brain to stay in that positive momentum? It's by doing a continuous practice to relate, to reshape and rewire my neural pathways according to the habit I want to create every day by showing up 100% every day. And another thing is, personally, let me just be subjective to myself, is I don't see anything wrong with having negative thoughts and positive thoughts, because those negative thoughts, that's sending a signal to you to do something about that. In a way, like if every day you are thinking you are positive every day, you will stay in your comfort zone. You wouldn't see anything to do, but you feel those negative thoughts because they're sending you a signal like, hey, this is where there's a pressure within your body where you need to act on it. But how can I do that is by acknowledging those negative thoughts, embracing them and working with them. What will be my way forward? What will be the best solution to that? And then when you asked today about like the top 3 thoughts I should be thinking right now was when I woke up this morning, I think for the last few months, what has been helping me a lot is writing gratitude every day, because when you are grateful every day, is like gratitude usually stimulates your hypothalamus. That's a part of your brain that regulates anxiety. So this morning I woke up and I wrote, what are 3 things that I'm grateful for? And what are 3 things that are going to make me happy today? And the first thing was today's session, because I've missed 3 days or a couple days. And then the second thing was just taking like a minute to just pause and check in with myself. How am I feeling? Because I can't say like there's no one that can be 100% the whole day positive. There's gonna be pressure from all sides, but you have to stay in balance. And then also being self-disciplined. So I mean, I don't have much to say about that, but it's just being able to work with both sides, like negative and positive, and see how you can balance both. And Elena, thank you for sharing that book. Actually, I had read that book before, I think sometime back last year. So yeah, that was my contribution for today. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Brainy. It's great to have you back. It seems that as we go along, we tend to drift, because remember I had intended that we were going to have a brief discussion and then from there we do coaching, but just something just ignited and it became inappropriate for me to list the attributes of thought, for us to learn them so that we can think about them and have it in such a way that we can always come back to it. Oh, it's everything we've shared today links back to that structure I had shared with you that has 6 layers. At the center is your spiritual core, your why, you're the essence of who you are and where you're going and why you are here. Then right next is identity. So that your why is followed by your identity, then it's followed by beliefs. So what we were discussing today, thoughts, it goes more, it can go into any of these layers, but most importantly to your beliefs. So that is inside of, the why, your spiritual core, followed by your identity, who you are, then followed by your beliefs. And James, you highlighted this, where your identity determines the beliefs that you will entertain. If you are a MacBook, you are only going to accept software that is suited for MacBook. So there is that interplay between thought and identity and thought. And then outside of that, then you have capability, what you can do, then subsequently behavior, and finally your environment. So all these ingredients keep playing with each other, such that the behavior of your body, for example, grief is an emotion. It's an emotional behavior, it's an emotional pattern, right? And it takes time to resolve it if we are focusing on grief. For example, it's once we redefine things, whether it's our identity or a relationship or an environment, it takes us to work on the level of identity. But these are attributes we will come back to. But for today, think about what thoughts mean to you, and think about what your key thoughts are. During this month, the remaining 31 days, what top 3 thoughts do you need to think about? Thoughts about yourself, thoughts about your opportunities, your environment, your relationships. What are going to be your top thoughts? So that these are thoughts that you can keep coming back to. And this is how we uninstall and reinstall and upgrade our software. We will end this session there today. It's been great It's been deeper, and I can feel it more profound than I had even thought through. There are some things that that ended up occurring to me as I was sharing these ideas about thought. And I'm going to go back and listen to this. I usually do this as I drive to work, or when I'm driving back from work in the evening, or in the evening as I prepare, just to see some of the things that came up so that I can reflect about what we share here. And I always replay your reflections because I end up learning so much from those reflections. Let's keep going. Tomorrow we won't have any specific subject prepared. We will come and just have a conversation and do the part of the coaching we should have done today and see what else arises tomorrow. So show up ready to come with your goals, come with the content that you have written before. We will use it for us to have a conversation that begins to make these ideas practical and to challenge us to continually think about them. That will be it from me today. My name is Dr. Joe Mogire from the House of Mastery. Continue living with passion, and it is 31 days to the end of this challenge.